from the suburbs to the inner city, how this pastor is helping transform lives. Plus, her desire to earn God's love led to self-abuse.
I would look at myself in the mirror and smack myself. I found myself lacking in every way.
Find out what she heard that set her free.
I was like, oh wow, I think this is true.
On today's 700 Club Interactive.
Hi, and welcome to the show. When a retired nun in Tampa took over what was once a failing housing development, she saw an opportunity to help provide affordable homes and fulfill her dream of helping foster children.
And as Abigail Robertson reports, she has also created a community that brings the old and the young together. Take a look.
It takes a village to raise a child. That's the motto here at New Life Village in Florida, a unique intergenerational community that's goal is to reduce the number of children in foster care and provide kids in need with a loving, stable environment.
I want to empty the foster care system. I want to be part of a process and that's a call from God.
Sister Claire answered that divine call with New Life Village.
These kids have really been through a lot, and so it's like living at a YMCA. We have all these events. We have pool time and movie night and craft time and tutoring, and there's always something going on.
The village doors opened in 2012 after a donor provided money to purchase a Tampa housing development sitting in foreclosure.
I was hoping that an intergenerational community such as this one would be attractive to people who otherwise could not adopt or even foster children out of the foster care system.
Her original plan was residents would either be parents of fostered or adopted children.
There's so much support in this community that it's crazy, but it's what's gonna help me and other kids. So I'm grateful for that.
I think it would be more difficult for us to foster if we were, at a place where we wouldn't have the support.
Or retirees willing to care for the children or community.
Of course, being in education all my life, it was a thrill to come here and be again with children.
Then Sister Claire quickly realized this community could provide help on a wider scale.
What God said is there are a lot of there are a lot of grandparents who are adopting and caring for their grandchildren. And they need a lot of support.
So her vision expanded to include families like Antonia's, who needed low-income housing and help with grandchildren she was suddenly raising.
It just blew my mind. But then again, I kind of knew and felt like, it was definitely all God. We automatically knew that God was taking us to a higher level.
And he was using Sister Aline to do so.
For me, Sister Aline is more than just a neighbor. She's actually my angel, our angel. Anytime, last minute, I can always call Sister Aline and know that she would always cover for the girls, for the boys, and has stayed with them numerous times.
Vivian Bordeaux moved here after retiring from teaching and now tutors the kids.
It gives me goosebumps when I think about I might make a difference in that kid's life. I might be the grandmother they were never able to have. I praise the Lord that I've been chosen to do this, and I really feel that way.
She also helps Marquise Carter, a single parent raising his two nephews.
It's important because both of my parents are deceased, and so my kids don't have a biological grandmother. So to have someone like Miss Vivian, someone like other residents here who take on that responsibility, give an extra hug, give a meal, come over here, let me love on you kind of thing, that's really important.
Marquise told us many children here have been through trauma and need an understanding community.
It's a soft place to land because life can be hard. They have meaningful relationships, meaningful friendships.
New Life Director Mariah Hayden tells CBN News they know the Lord will furnish needs for the future.
Anytime we have a hurdle, a challenge around here, we're such a prayerful community and we all come together and pray for what's meant to be, and it's like the wind is at our backs.
Mariah shared the story of a miracle for one of their newest residents, a grandmother who took in her 3 grandchildren after the 4th died from child abuse. And a 3-bedroom house opened at just the right time.
They'd seen several different foster homes. They'd seen their brother die. They'd seen the system of care try to figure out what to do with them. And God had, in his way, shown the grandmother here.
Even with this new home and friendly surroundings, the kids would not leave their grandmother's side.
When she came, they were glued to her. They were afraid to go to the restroom. They were afraid to just do anything. They'd seen so much in the last couple of months.
Then Mariah noticed a change that led her to believe things would work out.
That was a big moment because he felt safe enough to just take off with his bike. And he was doing laps around the village with this new bicycle. I saw the kids like, okay, we're home, it's safe, we're good.
Residents hope the trauma will be left in the past for many of these kids now that they're at New Life.
It's a joy. It's a joy being here.
It is. There's a long wait list to get into New Life Village, but they're working hard to raise the money to build even more houses on the 11 acres they're blessed to own. Reporting from Tampa, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Wow. Terry, and you watch a story like that and you begin to think, this is how Christ wants us to live in community, loving each other, supporting each other. The one gentleman said this is a soft place to land. Yeah. Do you think, I think you speak with some authority, so to speak, on this issue because you have adopted. Mm-hmm. And do you think Christians kind of miss the mark on the ministry opportunity out there with fostering and adoption?
Well, you know, I think the Bible tells us to count the cost before we build a house. However, I do think that when we take the safe route always because of what it might cost us, we do miss an amazing opportunity to be a part of what God is doing. Sister Claire is just one of my heroes. I'm with you, sister. Let's empty the foster care system. It's unbelievable. And in America, we should be able to do that. So what a noble endeavor. I love what she's doing. Love that community. You know, Orphans Promise is all about taking children from at-risk to thriving, whether they are total orphans or vulnerable children who find themselves in difficult situations. If you'd like to be a part of that, you know it is going to take all of us, not just a village, but all of us doing whatever it is God shows us to do. So you don't have to wonder about whether there's a place for you and all of that. Be a part of what we're doing. We just invite you to that. We're working in over 60 countries, as well as right here at home in the United States. And, you know, there are children who need all of us to love on them, to believe in them, to call forth the goodness and the promise in them. If you'd like to be a part of the work of Orphans Promise, we'd love to have you designate your giving to us. And it's so easy to do. Our number's toll free. It's 1-800-700-7000. When you give, just write Orphans Promise in the memo line, and you will be a part of changing children's lives around the world. Well, speaking of changing lives, up next, you're going to hear a true story about the power of giving people second chances. Pastor and author Bruce Deel is here to share his journey from the suburbs to the inner city right after this. Stay with us. On Atlanta's west side, drugs and prostitution are just a couple of the crimes that run rampant. But where there's need, our next guest saw opportunity to bring hope. Take a look.
Bruce Deel is the founder and CEO of City of Refuge, an organization he founded in 1997, built on the principle of trust. Since then, Bruce has helped over 20,000 people in one of Georgia's toughest neighborhoods escape the cycles of homelessness, joblessness, and drug abuse by giving them second chances. In his book, Trust First, Bruce shares the success stories as well as the failures of drug addicts, ex-cons, and human trafficking survivors, and the reasons why his City of Refuge model is being copied in cities across the country.
Well, Bruce Deel joins us now. Welcome to Interactive. It's nice to have you with us. Share with us, if you will, the background on how you became involved with Mission Church.
Sure. Once I graduated from Lee University, I went into traditional ministry for about 14 years. So I was a youth pastor, associate pastor, and I was on staff at a church north of Atlanta. 22 years ago, was I invited to go downtown on what we thought was a 6-month assignment to potentially close a little church and sell the property. And so I just went down to do a 6-month assignment and do something different out of the ordinary and then go back to our nice suburban life.
While you were there and closing down this church, a young woman came up to you and asked you a question. What did she ask you?
You know, she walked down at the end of the service and her words to me were, "I've been hooking and stripping 14 years. Can you help me get out of the life?" And it's just an amazing question I'd never been asked before, frankly. And our answer was yes, which led to her returning and bringing more people in crisis, who brought more people in crisis. And we had to continually say yes.
Eventually, you actually moved your family into the neighborhood. How did that come to pass, and why did you feel like that was important?
Yeah, we accepted the pastoral church and started City of Refuge as the nonprofit, or we call For Impact organization. And shortly thereafter, my wife, Rhonda, called one morning and she said, I really feel like if we're going to impact a community, we need to move into the community. And so we actually moved our 4 daughters at the time. We have 5 daughters, but we moved into this 65-year-old church building on the 3rd floor in downtown Atlanta to live among those that we were trying to bring light, hope, and transformation to.
There was so much that was negative and even frightening going on in that area. Were you fearful for your family's well-being?
When Rhonda and I look back now, we should have been fearful. I'm not sure we were at the moment. We felt like it was what we're supposed to do. And so in the middle of it, it was like a big adventure. And so again, we were broken into multiple times and vehicles stolen and threats on our life. But in the middle of it, you just felt like we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're helping change people's lives.
And you're understanding what people who live there face every day. I mean, it wasn't just you all because you moved in there. I mean, residents face these kinds of things for themselves and their children all the time. Talk a little bit about radical trust, because you write about that in your book. And I think that a lot of people wouldn't understand, how do you live in the midst of circumstances like you're talking about and have radical trust?
Yeah, early on, I started to understand that those who came to us in crisis and brokenness and places of destruction in their life, had come to a place where every place they entered, they said, prove to us that we should trust you. Yeah. And so there was always this qualifier that they had to have going in the front door. And so we just said, if we're really going to have a relationship, we're going to turn this, flip this, and we're going to say, you have to prove to us that we shouldn't trust you. And so, I think that's a biblical lesson. When I come to Christ with whatever my issues, he doesn't ask me to prove that I deserve anything. He just trusts that I'm going to do what I commit to do in prayer. And so we just decided we're going to trust you on the front end, and you'll have to show us that was a bad idea.
Yeah. A lot of people that are in inner city communities, because of the hopelessness and the desperation, have gotten caught up in alcohol, drugs, and that is a gripping thing in someone's life. So I know that as you work with people like this, they fall back into it. How do you apply that trust factor when somebody keeps falling back and out of moving forward positively?
Yeah, you say moving forward, and one of the lines I use in the first chapter of the book is, I was born with momentum. So I was born into a 2-parent household, Christian family, great school opportunities. Most of the folks we deal with were born without momentum, or with what I call reverse momentum. So they just never had an opportunity. So what is your natural reaction when you have 0 opportunities, 0 resources? You naturally make bad decisions. So we don't expect change overnight. We expect that this is a long, slow process. We use the phrase obedience is just simply a long, slow walk in the same direction. And so we choose daily to do the right thing the right way over and over and over. And we believe that eventually those individuals will buy into that.
Is there, there's a fine line, isn't there, between offering grace and more opportunity and being used in scenarios like that? How do you walk that journey?
Well, we've been used, and so we know we will again.
Yeah.
Anytime you extend radical trust, it is not always going to be embraced. It's not always going to be honored, and there's going to be some that take full advantage of that. So I have to teach my team over and over and remind myself, let's focus on the success stories. Yeah. Let's focus on those who did embrace it, who did move forward, and who are now successful and living the lives they were created to live. We just can't spend a whole lot of time on the negativity and the stories that didn't quite pan out.
Yeah.
That's right.
You had a genius concept come to pass, to me, genius anyway, called the one-stop shop. I don't know why we aren't doing this all over the country in every city in America, but talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, those first 6 years when we lived in the church, we provided a few resources along the way, but we had to refer people in crisis for multiple things. And so, you take a mom with a couple of children that has to go to 5, 6, 7, 8 different locations.
And has no car.
No vehicle, has to find public transportation, often has to find childcare. It's just a long, arduous road, and so they weary. And so when we got this donation of a 210,000 square foot warehouse 16 years ago, we said we can put medical here, mental health, dental, vision, vocational training, parenting, childcare, residential. vocational placement, all of this in one location. So it's just accelerated the journey for so many people over the years to have everything in one location.
Do you see that becoming kind of a standard in the country for people who are in need of all these services?
Well, City of Refuge is now in about a dozen locations, so there are a lot of folks that like that around the country. It's certainly a model I think should be used, right? Too often I'm afraid that we work in silo mentality, so we're just going to do one thing really well and let somebody else do another thing. But if we all work together in a collective impact approach, I think we can help people more quickly and more efficiently.
Well, I mentioned the trust factor. There's also a component to what you do. You don't judge people. You don't judge where they've come from or what they've been through. You love them where they're at and help them move forward. Boy, sounds like success and sounds like something we need all across the country as we deal with calling each other names and, I guess, unless you've walked in someone else's shoes, you cannot understand the journey. Yeah. Well, the book is called Trust First. It's great. Every American should read it. It's available wherever books are sold because it's got answers. And, we all need to walk in the path that God set before us so we can give some real feet to the ground and the vision that God calls us to. Thank you. What you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you. My pleasure to be with you.
Good to have you here. Andrew?
Terry, up next, a young woman who was full of hate for herself.
My self-esteem was at 0. I was just self-abusive. I would look at myself in the mirror and smack myself.
We're going to hear the words that set this woman free from a cycle of self-abuse. That's after this. Well, Christians around the world are choosing to stand with Israel, but why is this so important today? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. In the face of anti-Semitism, Israel needs the support of friends like you. And to request your free copy of the Friends of Israel magazine, call 800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com/Friends of Israel. Well, in our next story, we see an amazing life transformation. As a child of alcoholics, Shannon Caldwell spent her time striving for perfection, and she failed every time. Her failure turned to self-loathing, and that self-loathing to self-abuse, until the day she heard a voice, and for the first time in her life, she felt loved.
I was just self-abusive. I would look at myself in the mirror and smack myself. I found myself lacking in every way.
It was a never-ending cycle for Shannon Caldwell. As a young Catholic girl with alcoholic parents, she worked hard to earn their approval and God's.
I knew what a sinner I was, and I was trying to not be a sinner.
Throughout junior high and high school, Shannon worked hard to earn others' approval as well. She got a job in radio and immersed herself in activities.
I was on the high school quiz team and I was a cheerleader, but my self-esteem was at 0.
So, when a popular lifeguard asked her out the summer before her senior year, Shannon readily accepted, but the evening didn't go as she expected.
He gave me a little kiss and I thought okay, I'll kiss him. Why not? But then almost immediately he was on top of me. So I said, no. And I thought that would be that, because that is what we learn. You say no, they stop. That isn't what happened.
The rape left Shannon in shock, but she kept it to herself, aware that speaking up would only cause her further shame. Now she was anxious to earn her way back to God.
The culture of the church, it's clearly communicated that sex waits till marriage, so I had to find someone to marry me.
She found that someone. During her sophomore year in college, they married. But the relationship fell apart, and her husband left her just before Shannon graduated.
I had done my whole life trying to be good, perfect, and this was the result that I was getting. So I said, okay, I'm seeing people very successfully do life, and they're doing a lot of things that I was taught were bad things to do, drinking, dancing, whatever. And so I just did it all.
Shannon married a second time and had a daughter. Again, her husband left after 2 years. The sting of rejection still fresh, she looked to her career and being a single mom to fulfill her.
At that point, I had a career that I was really enjoying. I was working in some radio stations that were legendary, and I was growing, and I was surrounded by a really strong group of friends, and so my community held me up.
Just a year later, her parents were killed in a tornado. For the first time, however, Shannon didn't hear God's condemnation in her mind. She felt his love.
When I was walking through the wreckage of the tornado, I could hear the voice of the Lord. And he was speaking, he said, "Though I walk through the valley of darkness and the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." And then I found my dad's walking stick. And then I really feel like the Lord's saying, "I will help you walk. And I will show you where to go."
It would take Shannon 2 years to understand what that meant. By then, she was married to Joe and unhappy with herself and her marriage. Then she met a neighbor, Megan, and the two became friends. Later, Megan bought Shannon a Bible and suggested she start with the book of John. It was the first time Shannon ever read about Jesus and understood she didn't have to earn God's love.
The entire time that I am basically on earth, I'm thinking, we're on earth and there's heaven. How do we get there? And the answer most often looked something like, you do this, that, and not the other, okay? But Megan gave me a Bible that spoke differently about the answer to that question. There is an earth and there's a heaven. And how do you get from A to B? Jesus. And I wanted to follow him. I was like, oh wow, I think this is true.
Shannon started attending Bible study and reading the popular Rick Warren book, The Purpose-Driven Life. Suddenly, it all clicked.
The very first words of the book are, "It's not about you." And I had never heard that before. I thought that I was responsible for getting me into heaven. And this was amazing to me.
Shannon discovered God's grace covered all her shortcomings and failures.
I used to live in constant anxiety. But what I didn't know then is that God, even as he sees us, little me, big me, us right now, he delights in us as we are. Even if we're broken, even if we're making mistakes, he's loving us.
Today, Shannon and Joe are happily married and following Christ together. Shannon co-hosts a program on Family Life Radio and has written 2 books. She says her life is no longer a struggle.
I have no interest in measuring up anymore. I got one goalpost, and it's the Kings.
Isn't it amazing what happens when we listen to the wrong voice? When we choose to listen to the lies of our enemy, the adversary, Satan. We have an enemy who wishes to kill and steal and destroy. That's his mission. And Scripture says he's the father of lies. Lying is his native tongue. When words come out of his mouth, they are lies. And that our enemy prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. I want you to think today, what is your lie? What's the lie you've been believing? You may not know Jesus at all, or you could be a Christ follower already, but a lie has crept into your heart and your soul and your mind, and that lie is keeping you from finding true freedom in the salvation that is yours through Jesus Christ. What's that lie you are believing? For Shannon, it's a common one. I need to earn God's love. That Jesus' sacrifice on the cross was not good enough for me because I'm too filthy for it. I need to earn it. I need to prove to God I'm worthy of his love. That's a lie of the enemy. And then when we begin to act upon that and we fail because we can't earn his love, we can't perform well enough to earn the love of God. Another lie we're told is, see, you're not good enough, just quit. Just quit. And this cycle continues, and Shannon talked about having anxiety. Of course she had anxiety. Of course we will be anxious and have anxiety when we're in this cycle because it will not end as long as we listen to the lies. Jesus says he's the good shepherd. and his sheep know his voice. And I urge you today to listen to the voice of the one who died for you so you would not have to earn his love. When we have the belief system that we can or should earn the love of God, it means the cross really wasn't significant or powerful enough for our sin problem. And the blood that Jesus shed was just not enough to remedy my problem. The work of Jesus, the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross for you and for me, that's how we have relationship with a holy God. And I urge you today to leave that lie or those lies our adversary has put on you, leave them at the foot of the cross, okay? Pray with me now. Jesus, I'm at your cross, and I confess the lie that I've been believing from the enemy. And I leave it at the cross now. And I choose this day to listen to your voice, your loving, forgiving, merciful, gracious voice that always, always, always desires relationship with me. And I thank you that there's never a moment where you want separation. And Jesus, today, I commit my life to you, and I will walk in obedience and listen for your voice in all I say and do. In Jesus' name, amen. We leave you today with Ephesians chapter 2. For by grace you've been saved through faith, not your own doing. It's the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast.